A desperate mother sold one twin to save the other. 10 years later, the secret explodes, brothers collide, a family shatters, and a boy must choose between blood and the only father he's ever known. In the heart of Lagos, where the noise of Danfo buses and the cries of street hawkers fill the air, a young woman named Ifunanya lay on a hospital bed. The cries of newborn babies echoed through the ward. At last, after hours of labor, she gave birth to 2 healthy boys, twins. She named them Chidi and Chima. Their tiny cries brought tears to her eyes. For a moment, the world felt beautiful. Her husband, Emeka, rushed in from the waiting area. His eyes glistened as he held the babies in his arms. He kissed Ifunanya's forehead and whispered, "God has blessed us. Double portion." But behind Emeka's joy was a silent fear. He had been jobless for months after losing his factory job when the company shut down. His search for work had only led to endless rejection. And in Lagos, without money, blessings often became burdens. They returned to their home, a cramped one-room apartment in Ikeja. The space was barely enough for 2 adults, let alone 2 newborns. The walls were cracked, the zinc roof leaked when it rained, and the air was always heavy with the smell of kerosene and damp clothes. Ifunanya did her best, selling vegetables and second-hand clothes at the roadside market. Emeka tried to hustle, carrying loads for people, doing odd jobs, and sometimes driving Kiki Napep when a friend allowed him. But nothing was ever enough. At night, the twins would cry from hunger. Sometimes there was no milk, no pap, no food at all. Ifunanya would press them to her chest, trying to hush their cries with empty lullabies. Tears would roll down her face as she whispered, "Sorry my sons, sorry my children." The landlord, a tall, harsh man named Baba Tund, grew tired of their excuses. One evening, he stormed into their compound. "Ifunanya. Emeka. You people think I'm running charity here? 3 months' rent you have not paid. Next week, if I don't see my money, I will throw all of you out like goats." He slammed the door behind him, leaving their neighbors staring. That night, Emeka sat on the wooden stool, his head buried in his hands. "Ifunanya," he said quietly, "I will find something. Things will get better." But his voice carried no conviction. Ifunanya looked at him, tired and broken. "When, Emeka? When will it get better? The babies are hungry. We can't even buy soap to wash their clothes. How long will we keep living like this?" The words cut Emeka deeply, but he had no answer. He just stared at the cracked cement floor. Days passed, and hunger only grew sharper. One afternoon, while Ifunanya was outside washing clothes in a plastic basin, her neighbor Ngozi came to sit beside her. Ngozi lowered her voice and said, "Ifunanya, I don't know how to say this, but I see how you people are suffering. You have twins. That is double wahala." Ifunanya frowned. "They are my blessing, Ngozi. I will suffer for them." Ngozi leaned closer. Blessing, yes, but do you know that in Ikoyi, rich people are desperate for children? Some of them pay big money to adopt. Some women even give up one of their babies and change their life overnight." Ifunanya froze. She looked at her neighbor in disbelief. "God forbid. How can a mother sell her own child?" Ngozi shrugged. "Don't judge until hunger beats you well. Some women you see in fine houses today, that's how they started. One baby gone, but the rest of the family survived." Ifunanya's hands trembled as she rinsed the clothes. She wanted to curse Ngozi, but deep in her heart, the words found a place to sit. That night, as she rocked Chidi and Chima to sleep, her mind replayed Ngozi's whisper. She imagined one child in a rich home, with food, clothes, and education. She imagined herself with money to pay rent, to buy goods, to stop begging. She quickly shook her head, muttering, "No. Never." But the thought would not leave her. As days turned into weeks, the pressure grew worse. The babies cried louder at night. Emeka returned home every day with empty promises. The landlord's threats became fiercer. Ifunanya felt her body weakening, her spirit breaking. One fateful evening, she sat by the kerosene lamp, her eyes swollen from crying. She stared at her twins lying on the thin mattress. She whispered to herself, "What kind of mother am I, that I cannot feed my children? Maybe Ngozi is right, maybe this suffering will kill us all." And in that moment, a dangerous seed of desperation took root in her heart. The days grew darker for Ifunanya and Emeka. Hunger became a cruel visitor that refused to leave their home. The twins cried day and night, their thin voices piercing through the silence of the room. Ifunanya tried everything. She watered down pap, she borrowed money from neighbors, she even sold her wrappers one by one. But nothing was enough. One evening, the final straw broke. Baba Tund, the landlord, locked their door with a heavy padlock while they were inside. He shouted through the window, "You people will learn today. No more stories. No rent, no house." Then he left, laughing bitterly. When night fell, Ifunanya, unable to bear the cries of her children, begged Emeka to go and plead again. But Emeka, after standing at the window and speaking to the landlord, returned with his head bowed, saying the landlord refused. They had no choice but to sleep hungry, locked in their room like prisoners. The next morning, Baba Tund flung their few belongings outside. Neighbors gathered, watching the disgrace. Ifunanya clutched her children and sat by the roadside, her face wet with tears. The heat of the Lagos sun burned her skin, and the dust from passing vehicles filled her throat. She rocked her twins, whispering, "Sorry my children, sorry." It was at that moment that a woman approached her. She was different from anyone in the neighborhood. Her clothes were fine lace, her handbag expensive. Her steps were confident, and her perfume lingered in the air. She looked down at Ifunanya and smiled softly. "My dear, why are you crying here with your children?" the woman asked. Ifunanya wiped her tears, ashamed. "It is nothing, madam. Just life." The woman knelt a little, lowering her voice. "My name is Madam Kemi. I help women. I see pain in your eyes. Tell me, what is happening?" At first, Ifunanya shook her head. She did not want to open up to a stranger. But when Chidi began crying again, thin and weak, her heart broke. She told Madam Kemi about the hunger, the joblessness, the eviction. Madam Kemi sighed deeply, then leaned closer. "I can help you. But you must be strong to hear me." Ifunanya frowned, unsure. "Help me how?" Madam Kemi whispered, "There are families abroad. Families with money. They are desperate for children. They will pay any price to have one. You have twins. Give me one, and your life will change." Ifunanya gasped, clutching her babies tightly. "God forbid. They are my children." Madam Kemi's face remained calm. "Think about it. Right now you are losing both. Hunger will kill them. Poverty will bury you all. But with this chance, one child will live in riches, and the other will stay with you. You will also have money to take care of yourself. Do you want both of them to die in suffering, or will you save at least one?" The words cut Ifunanya like a blade. She stood up quickly, shaking her head. "No, madam. Leave me alone." Madam Kemi told her where to find her in case she changes her mind. She walked away with her children, but that night, her mind could not rest. Days turned to nights. Nights turned into more hunger. Emeka tried begging the landlord, who pitifully gave them as extra month to pay up, but Emeka still went out and came home daily with almost nothing. The children grew thinner. Their cries became weaker. And every time Ifunanya closed her eyes, she remembered Madam Kemi's words, "Save at least one." One afternoon, after watching Chidi cough and struggle, she broke down. Emeka had been gone a few days to work as a laborer at a construction site. She carried the children to a quiet corner near the market. There, Madam Kemi was waiting, as if she knew she would come. Ifunanya's eyes were swollen from crying. "Madam. I cannot, but I must. Take Chitty. He is weaker. Maybe in a rich home, he will live. Madame Kemi nodded solemnly, like a priest accepting a sacrifice. She opened her bag and brought out a huge brown envelope filled with crisp notes. Here. This will solve your problems. Rent, food, business. Take it. But from today, you must forget Chitty. Tell no one. If you speak, you will destroy everything. Ifunanya handed over the baby with trembling arms. Tears ran down her cheeks as Chitty was carried away, his tiny fingers reaching for her one last time. She cried out, "Forgive me, my son. Forgive me." That night, she returned home with Chima and the envelope of money hidden deep in her wrapper. Emeka, upon coming back, asked, "Where is Chitty?" Ifunanya began her rehearsed lie. She knelt beside him, sobbing. "Emeka, something terrible happened. While you were out, Chitty fell very sick. A good Samaritan rushed us to a hospital. I begged them to help, but they said I couldn't pay. Before I knew it, our baby was gone. They said because we had no money, they buried him quickly in their cemetery." Emeka's face turned pale. He sank to the ground, holding his head. "My God, my son, gone." Ifunanya wept loudly, hiding her guilt beneath her tears. 2 days later, Emeka noticed that Ifunanya had paid the landlord and even bought food. Suspicious, he asked, "Where did you get this money?" Through her sobs, she replied, "Church members heard about the baby. They helped. One wealthy woman gave me a big donation out of pity. At least God did not leave us empty-handed." Emeka, shattered by grief, nodded slowly. Maybe this is God's way of comforting us. With that money, they rented a better room in another compound, cleared their debts, and Ifunanya started a small provision shop. To outsiders, it looked like their fortunes had changed. But deep in her heart, Ifunanya knew the truth. Every night when she lay down, she saw Chitty's tiny hand reaching out, and she heard his weak cry. The money brought comfort, but her soul remained restless. 10 years passed quickly. Chima, the boy who remained with Ifunanya and Emeka, had grown into a tall and brilliant child. His teachers admired him for his intelligence and determination. At home, he was his father's pride and his mother's constant reminder of a secret she prayed would never come to light. Though life was better now, Emeka worked steadily as a driver and Ifunanya managed a small provisions shop. Ifunanya's heart carried a wound that never healed. Every time she looked at Chima, she thought of Chitty, the twin she had given away. At night, her dreams betrayed her. She often saw a small boy with searching eyes calling out, "Mama, why did you leave me?" She would wake trembling, drenched in sweat, with her heart pounding against her chest. Meanwhile, the twin she had sold was growing up in a world she could not imagine. Madame Kemi had delivered him into the arms of a wealthy couple, Chief Williams and his wife, Lady Margaret. The couple, childless for years, received him as an answer to prayer. To erase his past, they gave him a new name, David Williams. David grew up in luxury. He lived in mansions, traveled abroad, and attended the best schools. Chief Williams adored him, and Lady Margaret treated him as though he had been born of her own body. But despite all the comfort around him, David sometimes felt a quiet emptiness. His parents avoided discussing his early years, and whenever he asked where he truly came from, they gave vague, rehearsed answers. By fate, Chief Williams was transferred to Lagos for political campaigns. Wanting David to be among other brilliant children, he enrolled him in an elite secondary school on Victoria Island, the very school where Chima was already a student by scholarship. On the first day of term, the school corridors buzzed with excitement. Teachers and students stared in disbelief as David and Chima crossed paths. They looked like reflections of each other. Their voices, their eyes, even the way they walked, everything was eerily similar. Whispers spread quickly. Are they twins? Brothers? Or just a strange coincidence? Confused but intrigued, the boys themselves grew curious. They soon became friends, studying together, playing football on the same team, and even defending each other against bullies. Teachers playfully called them the twins, though officially no one could explain why they were identical. At home, Chima mentioned his new friend often. He spoke about David with a sparkle in his eyes, laughing about how everyone said they looked like brothers. Emeka chuckled at the thought. But the day Chima brought home a class group photo, Ifunanya's world collapsed. Her hands shook as she stared at the boy standing beside her son. The same eyes, the same smile, the same face she thought she would never see again. Chidi, her lost child, was alive, standing proudly as another woman's son, carrying another family's name. She dropped the photo as though it had burned her fingers and hurried to her room. Her chest heaved with sobs as she whispered, "God, my sin has found me out." Weeks passed, and the bond between David and Chima deepened. Then came the day that changed everything. In biology class, their teacher, Mr. Ade, assigned a project on DNA. By chance, David and Chima were paired together. The experiment was simple: compare genetic similarities. When the results came in, Mr. Ade thought it was a mistake. He ran the test again, and again the result was the same: David and Chima shared identical DNA. Unable to contain his shock, Mr. Ade called the boys aside. "My children," he said slowly, "what I am about to tell you may sound unbelievable. According to science, you are not just lookalikes. You are identical twins." The room seemed to spin. David froze, his heart racing. Chima stared at him with wide eyes. "Twins?" Chima whispered. "That cannot be true. My mother never told me I had another brother." David's voice trembled. "My parents always said I was adopted, but they never told me this." The revelation spread quickly through the school. Some students whispered, others laughed, but for the boys, life would never be the same again. That evening, Chima returned home restless. He dropped his bag, walked straight to his mother, and asked, "Mama, is it true? Do I have a twin brother? Why didn't you ever tell me?" Ifunanya's lips quivered. Her heart pounded as Emeka turned toward her, his face pale with shock. She could no longer hide behind lies. The truth she buried 10 years ago was finally standing at her door. And for the first time since that fateful night, she realized the secret she thought was dead had returned, wearing another name, David. The house was silent, but the silence was heavy, like the calm before a storm. Emeka sat on the wooden chair in their small living room, his hands clenched tightly together. He stared at his wife, the woman he had trusted with his life, the mother of his only son, or so he thought. "Ifunanya," his voice was low, trembling with restrained fury, "tell me the truth. Is it real? Did you sell my child?" Ifunanya's knees buckled beneath her. She sank to the floor, tears spilling freely. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Yes. Emeka. It is true." The word struck him like a hammer. He slammed his fist against the chair, his face red with rage. "You told me he died. You buried me in grief for a child who was alive. 10 years, Ifunanya. 10 years you let me believe I lost my son." Her hands trembled as she clasped them together, begging. "I was desperate. The hunger, the rent, the sickness. I watched our children cry every night. I thought both of them would die if I didn't do something. Madam Kemi came, she said a family would take care of him. I thought I was saving his life." Emeka rose to his feet, towering over her. His voice was filled with bitterness. "You did not save him, you sold him. You traded my son for money, and you lied to me. You buried the truth with your own hands." Ifunanya wept openly, her body shaking. "I carried that sin every day, Emeka. I lived with it. I could not bear to see your eyes filled with hate, so I told you he was gone. I thought it would be easier for you to mourn a dead child than to know your wife had sold him." Emeka turned away, his chest rising and falling heavily. His voice broke. "You destroyed me. You destroyed us." At that moment, there was a knock at the door. When Emeka opened it, Chief Williams stood there, his expression grim, his son, David, once known as Chitty, beside him. Lady Margaret was not there. She had been too shaken to face this confrontation. Chief Williams stepped inside, his voice deep and heavy. "So it is true. This boy, my son, is your blood." Emeka's jaw tightened. His fists curled at his sides as he glared at the man before him. "You knew?" he asked bitterly. Chief Williams shook his head, his tone sharp with anger, but not directed at Emeka. "No. I did not know. I was told the adoption was legal. I gave Madame Kemi a fortune, believing she worked through proper channels. She promised me the child came from an orphanage. She lied to me, just as she lied to you." His voice faltered, and his eyes dropped to the floor. "I raised David as my own. I loved him, gave him everything, and never once imagined I was raising another man's son. I thought I was rescuing a child from hopelessness. But now I realize I was part of a crime." Emeka's anger did not soften. His voice rose, his words sharp as blades. "A crime that stole 10 years of my son's life. A crime that turned me into a father of one, when I should have had 2. And all because my wife," he shot Ifunanya a piercing look, "decided to play God." Ifunanya collapsed further, pressing her forehead to the floor. Her cries filled the room. David stood frozen, confusion clouding his young face. His voice trembled as he asked, "So who am I? Am I David, or am I Chitty? Am I a Williams or a child you sold?" Chief Williams reached out, his voice breaking. "You are my son, David. I raised you. I love you. Nothing will change that." But Emeka stepped forward, his own pain erupting. "And you are also my son, Chitty. My blood. My flesh. You were stolen from me. 10 years of birthdays, of first steps, of school days, I lost them all." David's eyes darted between the two men, torn between loyalty and blood. His chest rose and fell as he whispered, "I do not know who I belong to anymore." Chima, who had been quiet all along, suddenly spoke. His voice was sharp, wounded. "Mama," he asked, his eyes burning with betrayal, "why him? Why did you sell him and not me? Was I less valuable? Did you keep me because I was weaker? Or did you choose him because he was stronger?" His words cut deeper than Emeka's anger. Ifunanya raised her head slowly, her face drenched with tears. "Chima, my son, I did not choose one over the other because of love. I chose out of fear. I thought if one was taken care of, the other might survive. I gambled with your lives, and it is my greatest sin." Chima's voice cracked. "You gambled with us as though we were not human. As though we were pieces you could trade. I will never forgive you for this." The room trembled with the weight of their pain. Then, as if the storm was not enough, word began to leak beyond the walls of their home. Neighbors whispered. Journalists caught wind of the story. Rumors spread about the powerful Chief Williams, accused of buying children in secret. Opponents in politics seized the scandal like hungry wolves, demanding investigations. Chief Williams felt the world closing in. "I may lose everything," he said bitterly. "My career, my name, my honor, all because of one woman's desperate decision and one madam's greed." But Emeka's voice thundered above his despair. "You speak of honor, Chief, but what about my son? What about the boy who was torn from his father's arms and given another name? I do not care for your politics. I care for my blood." David turned toward his mother, Ifunanya, his voice barely audible. "If I am truly your son, then why do I feel like a stranger in your home? Why do I feel like you abandoned me, and now you only cry because the truth has come out?" Ifunanya's chest heaved with sobs. She reached for him, but he stepped back, his face hard with anger and pain. Chima, his voice low but steady, whispered the words that echoed through the room, "This family will never be the same again." And he was right. The secret that had been buried for 10 years was now a storm too fierce to contain. The revelation did not stay a family matter for long. In less than a week, the story broke into the headlines of major Nigerian newspapers. Politician in baby sales scandal. Family reclaims lost twin. Illegal adoptions exposed. Overnight, what had been Ifunanya's darkest secret became a public storm. Journalists camped outside their home, microphones pushed in Emeka's face whenever he stepped out. Neighbors whispered and pointed fingers. Some condemned Ifunanya as a wicked woman, others pitted her as a victim of poverty. The case was dragged to court. Inside the packed courtroom, the air was heavy with tension. On one side sat Emeka and Ifunanya, their faces marked by years of struggle and sorrow. On the other side sat Chief Williams, Chidi's wealthy adoptive father, dressed in a fine agbada, his eyes weary but determined. Between them sat Chidi, now called David, caught in the middle of two worlds he never asked for. The prosecution painted a grim picture of child trafficking in Nigeria, exposing Madam Kemi's operation and showing evidence of other stolen babies she had sold to desperate families. Madam Kemi was arrested, her empire crumbling under the weight of investigation. But the most painful question remained unsolved: who should keep Chidi? Chief Williams' lawyer argued passionately. This boy has lived with my client since infancy. He knows him as a father. He has enjoyed education, love, stability, and care. To uproot him now will cause irreparable emotional damage. Biology alone does not make a parent. Then it was Emeka's turn. He rose from his seat, trembling but firm. His voice cracked as he spoke. My lord, I may not be rich. I may not have given my son the life of luxury. But I am his father. He is my blood. I was robbed of 10 years of watching him grow. Every birthday I missed, every first step, every word he spoke, I was denied. I cannot stand here and watch another man claim my child because of the poverty that nearly destroyed us. Please, give me back my son. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. Ifunanya wept silently beside him, her face buried in her hands. The judge listened carefully, her expression unreadable. After days of heated arguments, she finally delivered her verdict. She acknowledged the tragedy of the situation and the crimes of Madam Kemi, but when it came to custody, she looked directly at Chidi. You are old enough to understand. The law can argue endlessly, but ultimately, your heart knows where it belongs. Tell this court, who do you choose to live with? The room went silent. Everyone turned to the boy. Chidi, David, stood, tears in his eyes. He looked at Emeka, his biological father, broken and desperate. Then he looked at Chief Williams, the man who had raised him with care and devotion. His lips trembled as he spoke. I love you both. But the man who has been my father all these years is Chief Williams. He is the one who taught me, who tucked me into bed, who cheered at my school plays. I want to stay with him. But, he turned to Emeka and Ifunanya. I also want to know you. I want to be part of my real family too. Please, don't shut me out. Don't hate me for my choice. The courtroom erupted with murmurs. Emeka collapsed into his chair, tears streaming down his face. Ifunanya's sobs filled the room. Chief Williams pulled Chidi into a tight embrace, his own eyes red with emotion. The judge banged her gavel for silence. The boy has spoken. Custody remains with Chief Williams. But he must ensure regular access to the biological family. This is my ruling. And just like that, the matter was settled. In the weeks that followed, life became a shadow of what it once was for Ifunanya. She spiraled into depression, haunted by the choice that had set everything into motion. She could no longer walk freely in her neighborhood, people's stares burned into her skin, their whispers cut deeper than knives. Some called her the mother who sold her child. Others avoided her completely. Emeka, though heartbroken, eventually found it in himself to forgive her. I cannot carry bitterness forever, he said one quiet night as they sat in their now silent home. But Ifunanya, our marriage, it will never be the same. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Their love, once bright, now lived in shadows. Chima, meanwhile, carried the heaviest confusion of all. He had always been the child who stayed, the one who wasn't sold. For weeks he struggled with resentment. One night, he finally confronted his mother. "Why didn't you choose me that night? Why was I the one you kept, and Chidi the one you gave away?" His words cut her like a blade. Ifunanya broke down, holding him tightly. "Chima, it was never about choosing. I was desperate. I thought, if I gave away the weaker child, at least one of you would survive. I thought I was saving you both in different ways. But I was wrong, my son. I was so wrong." In time, Chima began to heal. The brothers, now reunited, promised each other that no matter where they lived, no matter which house they called home, they would never allow the past to break their bond again. They wrote letters, made calls, and shared secrets, building a bridge between two lives torn apart by poverty and lies. As for Chidi, David, he grew wiser beyond his years. Though he chose to remain with Chief Williams, he carried with him a deep understanding of the fragile line between love and desperation. He forgave Ifunanya, but her actions remained etched in his heart like a scar he could never fully erase. In the end, the story of the twins became a cautionary tale told in whispers across Lagos. Mothers shook their heads and warned one another, no amount of hunger should make us trade our children. The pain that follows is greater than the poverty. If you like this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell so you don't miss any uploads. Thanks for watching and catch you in the next video.